So, just in case I accidentally use this video, which I don't intend to, as an explanation, this is me figuring out my new selfie stick, which is supposed to be automatic tracking and all that kind of junk. But I had to turn the camera on to make this work. Oh, okay. And as all guys, yeah, it's all guys. So guys, just admit it. I don't like to read instructions, you know. I'd rather look at the instructions, at the pictures, and then go, aha, this is how I would have invented it. But then the words, you know, that are supposed to be useful. I find all men, guys I know, things like that, they don't like that shit. We've never liked that. Oh, that's a remote control. That's neat. I don't need a remote control. That's actually if you're going to use the tripod and you'll be sitting away from it or some damn thing. I don't need that. Very interesting, though. I didn't know that that was included. Shutter. Fantastical. All right. I swear to God, I should teach classes on the shit I know in exchange to other people for the shit they know. Like, I don't know, you know, I went through 6 years of online college. You'd think I'd know all kinds of technology stuff, and I kind of do, but at the same time, I kind of don't. It's, you know, I always say digital was not my first language, which, you know, you see 8 million, you know, 2-year-olds running around with their mommy's phone kind of thing and stuff. They learn how to speak digital before they learn how to really master English, you know, or the spoken word, whatever. And so I'm guessing this is my actual theory, my scientific theory, if I were an actual scientist. So I believe that people that their first language is analog. It's the morning, by the way. I just got up not long ago. Hence my wild hair and my baggy eyes and my sunny disposition. But I think that people that learn to speak analog first, because, you know, like certain generations, X, that kind of stuff, people that can remember what a phone booth used to look like. For whatever reason, we're not as adept. Even though I've been around technology for decades, you know. My first cell phone was a big brick. My company paid $800 a month for it, which they whined about a lot until I told them that, listen, I'm not making one single phone call to anybody I know. It's all scheduled calls that you've required that I call, or you calling me, but it's on roaming, $800 a month. Yeah, that's painful. But I could have a pager, you know, and then I could get to a payphone and call you guys, you know. That was my first cell phone, though, was the gigantic brick. But anyway, I got this selfie stick because I keep on seeing people like on YouTube and stuff using them. And it almost looks like there's a whole other person there videoing them. Otherwise, I don't really care about the idea of a selfie stick. But it just looks good, looks cool. I've got some really techie friends out there that are into videography and all that kind of stuff. And I'm guessing they totally have the whole, you know, all this down pat. So for them to be watching me is probably a chuckle, you know. Okay. So, I am in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, USA. It's where I recently just moved here on a temporary basis for work stuff. Not my work, my wife's work. We were in Clinton, Iowa, USA. And that's where our house is. But my wife's company promoted her to a. I like to say it's an ASS, but it's actually a SSA. It's strategic analyst, and I don't know what the other S is for. But anyway, what it really means is she was a manager of a really big apartment complex, and she's a badass. She's one of the most intelligent people I've ever met. And she has 2 master's degrees. And one of them is in something that I've never encountered before, but it was the school I was going to that was recommended to me by my friend Jeremy Light, who is possibly one of the smartest people I've ever met before. And I only say one of whenever I say that is because I don't want to forget somebody and then have some genius fucking track me down and beat me up in some genius way. You know, has anybody ever seen that Sherlock Holmes movies with that guy named Downey Jr.? The hell is his name? By the way, that's the other thing. Before I've had coffee, which is right next to me, I can't remember shit. My brain's not stimulated yet, I guess, or something. Anyway, Robert Downey Jr. I think that's his name. Yeah. But yeah, genius ways to beat people up. The scariest person ever anywhere is not a serial killer or something like that. It's a person that has a PhD and can win bar fights. Okay. One of my brothers is a little bit of a Renaissance man that way. He's got a PhD, really incredibly smart type. But took a karate class and shit like that, which he and I haven't mixed it up since we were kids. But I bet he's a badass now. You know, I've been the bar fight guy, never been the PhD guy. And I've actually never been in a bar fight other than I worked there, so don't get anything twisted. Need a facelift or something? But I've won lots and lots of bar fights, but it was never, ever me there as a customer. Not once. I kind of looked at it like I didn't mind. I'll be real about it. I've always kind of liked to fight. And which is really embarrassing because it's not a very smart trait, you know. But my theory was when I was younger that, hey, if I want to do that, you know, the old saying was, if you like to fight, join the army, right? Well, I did that. I didn't get any fighting in. Not really. So I kind of continued that, and it's like, if you like to fight, figure out how to have it as a job, you know? I boxed when I was young, just enough to knock the sense out of me. If I had it ever, I don't know, but I got it now. But I haven't decided whether I really like this selfie stick thing. I just got to get used to holding it in my hand. But yeah, I said to myself, well, I could do all that kind of stuff and at the same time be doing something good. You know, I tried the sheriff's department thing and that sucked. That really sucked. It wasn't what I thought it would be. Very much so. And too many of the people there were crazy. And they weren't, I don't think they were crazy when they started. A lot of them weren't anyway. There were probably some of them, but the job made them crazy. So I don't make really great decisions, you know, and I don't have a track record of that. But that was one of the wise things. I stopped doing that. I stopped pursuing that. I stopped jonesing for that. in my very early 20s. And I'm really proud of myself for that, because I think a lot of guys don't make that good decision that probably should. And when I ended up starting as a bouncer, I was driving home on a job search, right, day in Oregon, state of Oregon. And I was going past a gigantic strip bar. And I thought, well, fuck. And it was giant. And I thought, if anybody needs security, it'd be a place like that. I said, but I was married. And so I said, I don't know. I never spent time in strip bars, So it wasn't that. I just was driving by and saw it. So I went home and told my wife, about my day, da-da-da-da-da. And my wife at the time, not my wife now. And I said, hey, there is a big bar out there on the highway that I could go apply at if you wouldn't feel, funny about it. She thought about it for a second and then said, no, it's okay. And she wasn't lying or whatever. I was watching for whatever. And, but she knew I wasn't a big cheater or anything like that. And that I think if you are that, you project it. Or, other things, they when you're around somebody enough, you can kind of tell what they are, what they have going on. And she knew I wasn't susceptible to that, which was kind of funny, because I did start working there. I just went, they could have shut me down. They could have been full up. They could have been whatever. But I went by the next day and applied. And I thought I was going to apply, but I got hired on the spot. And it was funny. I ended up managing the place for a couple of years. And I guess my strength there was that I wasn't susceptible to the charms of the ladies. A lot of them had this thing going on where that if they, they wanted stuff like a better schedule, like you had to dole out the schedule kind of in a fair way, because there were certain nights, certain hours, certain days that made more money. And I'm talking about the difference between, say, $100 in a day to $800 in a day. And there was a never-ending stream of these girls trying to bribe, basically, the person who made the schedule to put them on the best schedule so they could end up working 3-4 days a week. And, when you say 3-4 days a week, you're talking about 4 or 5 hours at a time. And they would still make $5,000 a week, And that was in the 90s. I can only imagine what it is now. And the owner liked me because the owner was a jackass, but the owner liked me because the girls ended up respecting me simply because I wasn't a piece of shit that those places almost always seem to employ. And I can say that because I had experiences with a bunch of them after that. I opened up 2 more bars for him. So he had 3 bars, but they are around the state in the right places. I did all the scouting of them before the other 2 were open and all that junk. And then trained the staff. And when I say the staff, I don't mean the girls. Actually, it's funny. For a while there, the joke was that I named half the girls in Oregon. But I never named them. I gave them suggestions. And anyway, that was a whole nother life. That's a whole nother set of stories right there. I ended up doing that for about 4 years. Not at the one club, but kind of like circulating between that one and the 2 others that I opened up. And then, I went to a couple of different clubs to help them, kind of a thing. And eventually I met a buddy of mine who is, we don't talk much anymore because he's pretty hardcore MAGA. And, we just, I'm not hardcore any direction. In fact, I used to be pretty much apolitical, but I've never missed a vote, and I always thought it was a civic responsibility, you know. But I am not a rah 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 guy until I see something wrong, really wrong, and then I'll talk about what's wrong, basically, and try to talk up the alternatives and things. And my buddy was not political at all. In fact, I don't know if he ever voted when we first started hanging out, which is in my late 20s. But we started our own business after that, and started doing stuff after that, and got out of that strip bar stuff. And I don't know if he's ever gotten out of it, to be honest, because he ended up moving to another state that was, you know, clubs and strip bar heavy, you know, like there was their cash crop. And if he's gotten out of it, it would have been because as we get older, I'm now 57. We were all young bucks back then, but as guys get older, the physical jobs that they once had that they excelled in and stuff like this. My friend was a monster. One, he was a power lifter, so not a bodybuilder. Bodybuilders are for show, okay? All the people I've ever hung out with that were big like that were either in the military, and they needed to be very, very strong. It's insane what the human body can do. I've seen some people do deadlift themselves, you know, up a rope, no legs, carrying, you know, somewhere around 100 pounds on their back. Trippy. But my friend was like that. One time I saw him pick up a car just for fun, just walking by a Volkswagen. The back end, you know where the motor is, the heavy part. He just bent down, grabbed the bumper, stood up, it come up off its wheels and everything, and I was like, Jesus fuck. And put it back down gently, and we walked into the gym where we were going. And I guess he was just getting a start, but it didn't look like a real challenge. Yeah. And you know, the whole thing where people, if they get off a subject or whatever, they say, "Oh, I digress." I would never bother to say that because I do it constantly. I don't know if it's part of ADD or something like that, but I have no doctor ever diagnosed me officially with ADHD. My mother did, which she was a very smart lady, who had, you know, master's degree in education. She was a teacher at a college, and she called me up one day and she goes, I think you have ADHD. And I'm like, well, thanks a lot. What's that? She's like, it's attention deficit. And I'm like, oh shit, yeah, I probably have something like that. And then I looked it up. I started researching it. I'm like, holy shit, I self-diagnosed. And, you know, which is the way you should always do stuff. Yeah, I know. But it was too 100% on the money. And it was easy. It was an easy diagnosis. Yeah. I'm just happy I wasn't diagnosing myself with schizophrenia. It could be worse, right? But because my oldest brother, half brother, was a paranoid schizophrenic, and his mother though was schizophrenic. And again, none of that. Well, no, my brother I'm sure was properly diagnosed, but his mother was not. My dad just told stories, and I'm like, I know what that is. And then later, you know, at some point in my life, in my 30s, no, it was in my late 20s, I took classes that would be beneficial for somebody in a security, because I transitioned away from the law enforcement to something where I could make money at with my skill, and it was different types of private security. Literally at one time I private contracted and assessed businesses for security systems. None of them was like ADT, none of that kind of stuff. It was all, custom built, that kind of stuff. But, and I also did a lot of private security, bodyguarding. That was my friend and I's thing. He was a professional bodyguard, along with the things that he did for a living. And that's what I got into too, just for good money here and there, We would go to Vegas for like a weekend occasionally and make like $3,000 in 2-3 days. And we called that good. That was in the 90s. And yeah, there's a ton of stories there. One time I had to do a bodyguarding gig for an AVN 2 times. For AVN, that's the Adult Video something or the news maybe, I don't know. I don't remember now. But it was a porn convention. Yeah. The first time was interesting. The second time was even more interesting. But I've never attempted to do it again because it's just it wasn't for me, Yeah, it's a whole other story there. Where you're basically protecting a celebrity at a celebrity convention, and that just so happens that the celebrities were adult video stars, adult movie stars. Yeah, the first one was a gay guy from Germany. I'm really happy I didn't understand most of what was being said. And they have a table of pictures and videos and DVDs that they were selling, and autographs and stuff like that. The second one was a lady that had to be as old as my grandmother, and I thought maybe she was from back in the day, like the Blue movies, from in the old days, but it was not that. It, much to my surprise, that it was a fetish thing, and she just seemed so sweet though. When I picked her up at an airport in Vegas, and I took her to the convention, and the whole time I thought, oh, this is going to be easy. This is going to be fun. This lady's nice. And I just assumed it was kind of like stuff from her past, and she's going to be. I'm not a prude. She's going to be shaking hands and give autographs and pictures. And I figured they're going to be pictures from like the latest of the 60s, so like it'd be like black and white and stuff like that. Oh my God, was I wrong? But nobody warned me. And when we got to the convention thing, she turned on a dime, and she started talking in ways to people that I was like, my grandmother's never said those things. Oh, that was a rough one. All I was doing was standing there, in a tux, and both times, and making sure nobody molested the two. But I don't think the first fellow would have minded that much, to be honest. Judging by the actions of the day, he was a character. And that day, I was actually a little more concerned about my own safety than his safety, only because all the people he's sitting at a table, I'm standing behind him, and all the people coming by had lots to say. Some people lots to say in German, and there was plenty of times, and I mean plenty of times, when the conversation turned to me, and I was nothing special. I was not a handsome man. I was good sized, and I know you can't even imagine it now, but a lot of people that knew me back then wouldn't even recognize me now. I had a beard and mustache and long hair, all one length long hair. And I like my mom's reaction, because I grew up military and my hair was always short. And my mom's reaction when she first saw me after I grew out my hair was, "Oh, your hair's so much prettier than Becky's." That's my sister. And I think it was my mom's way of kind of dealing with her son looked like a hippie. But I told everybody eventually. Everybody eventually learned that I was not a hippie. I was closer to being a Viking. Yeah. But my mom loved my My long, wavy, beautiful hair is the way she described it. I would describe it as manly hair, but it was actually kind of pretty. Um, but 90% of the time, 99% of the time, I wore it back in a ponytail, and my whole vision was I was trying to look a little bit like Steven Seagal, but I didn't look like Steven Seagal. My hair looked a little bit like Steven Seagal's hair, that when he, like in the first few movies where he had his hair all slicked back and in a ponytail kind of a thing, except my ponytail was a little longer. I know. That's what happens when people are young. They do weird shit. So, anyway, yeah. I don't normally do videos where I look like I just woke up. But actually, I'm just trying to test out this dang selfie stick that I just bought, which is like supposed to be automatic. It's got all kinds of electronics with it and stuff. And so I'm not even ultra sure I'm going to post this. We'll see. Probably will. Because I have no shame. Not really. I have shame. It's all internal. It's just there to mess with me and give me nightmares. It doesn't dictate my actions at all. I don't have that kind of shame. I don't have shame that's useful. I have shame that's destructive. That's all. Like most people, self-destructive. Yeah. And I should never look at myself in videos, because like right now I can see how my I guess in the morning when my face is still trying to reorient itself to look human. You can see how I used to fight, box, and my face is all twisted. Of course, I don't have very good vision up front. I mean, close up. I had eye surgery a few years ago, and it's now I see like an eagle far off, but up close, it's way worse than it ever was. I used to have really good close-up vision, but now to read and stuff like that, I have to wear glasses. And if you get that surgery, that's what they tell you. Do you want far-off vision or close-up vision? And I always had close-up vision, so I was like, give me the far-off one. I want to try that. And they didn't tell me that I'd be fucking blind up close. So I'm looking at my face, and I can see eyes and a nose and stuff. And that's another mean thing. Guys' noses, they get bigger as we get older. It's fucked up. I'm just going to stop looking. All right. Sometimes I have a point to the videos and stuff. I don't think I do this time. What I'm going to do is stop the video, take a shower and stuff, so that I seem maybe woke up or something. Yeah. Drink my coffee, and then I'll do another video that's a little more purposeful, and I'll post it. This one's going to get posted to, like YouTube. The other one's going to get posted to LinkedIn, because I use these videos now for advertising for my new business. And I will say my new business here, just in case some nutball's watching YouTube. It's called Professional Maintenance Consulting, LLC. But it's I did apartment maintenance, and I started out apprenticing for my dad as an electrician, so I became an electrician without actually doing the real apprenticeship, because he passed away before I could have finished it anyway. I did it for like 8 years with him, and then I became a carpenter, and I worked for a company in Oregon as a framer, and so I helped build a lot of houses. And I think my next thing then was I went to work for hotels as a maintenance person. So I was a maintenance technician, and I learned all the finer points of residential maintenance and stuff from some wacky dude from Texas. And, basically plunging toilets and, fixing electrical problems, which I at least knew how to fix all that stuff. But I learned all that kind of stuff. And then I ended up transitioning from that to working for an apartment complex, and I was really lucky. I got to apprentice under a really, really, really experienced maintenance supervisor. He was in his 70s at that time, about 70 or so. And 4 years after I started, he retired. But there was a reason why he focused on me. It's because we were transitioning from where he was, which is a town, an hour or so away from us, into this next town where I lived, and we were building 1,000 apartments in a couple of years, and I had to be able to hire and train all the people at the other apartment complexes, and then monitor their progress and their work and stuff. And so John was the guy, names of the guy that mentored me, trained me, and all that stuff. So and then I did that for a long time, different companies and stuff. So I'm really good at apartment, residential maintenance. I worked for a company where everything we did was most everything we did was houses, rental houses that the place managed. And so there's a lot of things to know in that, and I know it. Then during COVID, now I did other things after that. I worked for a cable company for a while. I was in a town that didn't have a ton of apartment maintenance needs or whatever. I was a cable installer. So I learned and I already knew all the electronics part of it and stuff, which was handy. And so I got good at that, which is come in handy on the apartment thing too. And then I did a lot of unrelated things. I worked as a deckhand off and on since I was 18 on towboats on the Mississippi River and Lake Pontchartrain and in the port of New Orleans and the port of St. Louis and also the port of Clinton, Iowa, which is a small town, but it's a big port, a lot going on there. And and I've also run what they call long line, which is taking tows all the barges, groups of barges, all the way up from New Orleans up to Cassville and St. Paul, stuff like that. And I've run all the intercoastal waterway in southern America, which is from Corpus Christi, Texas, to Pensacola, Florida. So I did a bunch of that back and forth stuff, and I really loved that part of my life. That was the hardest job I've ever done. It was a dangerous job. It was a job I was really lucky. For the most part, I worked for a really big company called Artco. They really care about their people, but most of the other companies I worked for are basically professional pirate ships, and they don't care about their people that much, and their safety is, for the most part, is dog shit. And still learned a lot, still enjoyed myself. I mean, it's a job for a dude, because that's how pirates came to be. It's just a bunch of guys got together and say, hey, how can we make our lives, be like what we want? And they became pirates. And it just so happens that I used to live in a place called Jean Lafitte. Weird. But yeah, I'm gonna stop this video before I continue to rattle on. Anybody that knows me or that watches these knows that I have a very difficult time. It's basically a legal handicap of some kind, where that I talk fucking forever, and I get off subject, and I could cover some kind of maybe a record number of subjects in probably 1 minute. I don't know, but it's in charge of me. I'm not in charge of it, unfortunately. It's the way it is, I guess. So whenever you're seeing me prattle on, you're witnessing abnormal psychology. It could be a class, I actually took a class in abnormal psychology, so yeah, I get it's a class. But you're watching a legitimate insane person. Nobody's ever diagnosed me though, so ha 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 to the professionals, like my first grade teacher, who probably thought I would be in prison at some point, but I wasn't. Never worn handcuffs in the wrong way. Not in the wrong. I mean, never installed by a cop. Let's put it that way. Okay, I gotta go. Have a great day, and I'm really sorry about this video.